I attempted a hardcore nuzlocke of Pokemon Violet using only Pokemon native to the Hoenn region. In a nuzlocke, when a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead, and for this run, I have completely banned setup moves to make things even harder. Hoenn has some god tier starters, so picking one was a pretty tough decision, but I decided to go with the starter I picked in my first ever Sapphire playthrough. So welcome, Phantom the Trico. The first gym leader is Katie, and well, Trico has a pretty awful matchup against bug types. But thankfully we do have a solution, the TM Acrobatics. With this, Phantom is able to one-shot her first two Pokemon, leaving her with Teddiursa, who is a lot bulkier and a lot stronger than her first two Mons. And I'm honestly not sure if Phantom even lives a single Fury Cutter, and her Acrobatics just barely isn't enough to get the one-shot. But thankfully, Phantom clutches up with a cheeky little sidestep and avoids the attack, so with another Acrobatics, Hoenn earns their first badge. And thanks to the XP from the battle, Phantom evolves into Grovyle, one of the coolest middle stage starters. Now that could have been a speedrun for the fastest Nuzlocke wipe ever, so I should probably go get some new team members. And I start things off with Skylar the Ralts, one of the only fairy types we'll have access to this run. I also catch Lisa the Surskit, who will eventually get the Intimidate ability, an invaluable ability for any Nuzlocke. And if you guys want an encounter nicknamed after you, all you have to do is like, subscribe, and comment down below your favorite Generation 3 Pokemon. With a new lineup, I could take on the Stony Cliff Titan, and while Phase 1 was extremely easy with it only taking 2 Bubble Beams, Phase 2 would prove to be deadly. Klawf wastes his first turn with a block, allowing Lisa to hit a Terra boosted Bubble Beam, as Arvin also wastes his turn with a Life Dew. Despite shredding her bug typing, Lisa gets one-shot by a Rock Tomb. I know Surskit isn't the bulkiest Pokemon around, but getting one-shot by a neutral Rock Tomb is insane, and is the first death of the run. I bring in Phantom to avenge his Hoenn sister with a couple of Mega Drains, winning the battle, but losing an Intimidate Pokemon is super unfortunate. That wouldn't stop me from challenging Brassius for the second badge though. Once again, Acrobatics is my trump card, which is strong enough to one-shot both his Petalil and Smoliv. However, his Sudowoodo is an absolute tank, and Acrobatics doesn't even bring it below half HP. Thankfully, the stupid tree is committed to spamming Trailblaze, so a couple more Acrobatics and we've earned the second badge. We have some terrifying battles coming up, so I'm going to need some more Hoenn Pokemon to fill out the team. Starting off with Rob the Makuhita, Mossy the Shroomish, an incredible Pokemon as it's one of the very few Spore users in the game, and the last encounter in Paldea for now is Jude the Vigoroth, a Gen 3 Pokemon I've actually never used before, so I'm pretty excited to see what she can do. I then travel to Kitakami to catch my replacement Intimidate user, Mighty the Poochyena. I then catch a Corphish, and last is Chris the Nosepass. I now have a pretty stacked roster, so I should be more than prepared to challenge the Sky Titan. And our newly evolved Mightyena now has Intimidate, lowering Bombardier's attack stat. Unfortunately, she's also got like dirt in her eye or something because she somehow misses a Thunderfang on a target as big as the screen. Mighty is able to land a Thunderfang on the next turn for some pretty solid damage, but her HP is quickly falling. But in the end, I decide to risk the crit, staying in as Wing Attack brings her down to just 10 HP. A Thunderfang does bring the Titan to under half HP, but now I'm forced to switch into Chris, who can finish Phase 1 with a couple of Rock Throws. Phase 2 can be pretty tricky because unlike the Cliff Titan, I'm not allowed to heal between phases, so Mighty starts the fight with 10 HP, so obviously I'm forced to switch straight away. I bring in Chris, who is able to tank a good volley of attacks while landing some solid Rock Throws, all while Arvin's Knackley sets up Rock Polish 3 times. God damn it dude, just hit. Eventually Arvin decides to be actually useful and a Smackdown finishes the battle. Getting past the Sky Titan with 0 deaths is always a good sign for things ahead, but next up is Giacomo, who is definitely no slouch. Thankfully, our grumpy little mushroom can evolve into the much more emotionally stable Breloom, who is really good at punching things. That smile might be a lie, or maybe it's from the pleasure of beating his enemies. Well, let's take on Giacomo. He leads with Pawniard, but Mossy immediately takes advantage of our new skill set, one-shotting it with a Mach Punch. Pawniard was never going to be a threat though, as Giacomo sends in his real problem, the Starmobile. I switch into Mightyena, who intimidates it, lowering its attack, which should give me a relatively safe switch into Skylar, who traces the Starmobile's ability, intimidating it again, lowering it to -2 attack.
but it did land a metal sound, so with lower special defense, I decided to switch out Skylar and bring in Mighty, who is able to land a few crunches before being brought down to 12 HP, forcing me to switch into Rob. Unlike Mossy, Rob's Terra type is fighting, so I waste no time pulling that Terra trigger, boosting his fighting type moves as he's forced to tank a nasty Swift, and a Terra boosted, super effective Force Palm barely does any damage. Well, Rob, your wife isn't the only one left unsatisfied tonight. I stay in to land a second Force Palm as the Swift damage is starting to add up. I decide to stay in for just one more Force Palm as Rob is brought down to 2 HP, and the third Force Palm doesn't even bring the Starmobile into the raid. No matter though, Skylar can finish the battle with a couple of draining kisses, and that's another big battle won with 0 deaths. But will Iono be as easy? Well, before that, Nemona challenges us to a battle, and this is where I found out how OP Vigoroth can be. I start by using a Focus Energy as Rockruff boosts his attack with Howl, but since she's faster, Jude can encore it, forcing it to use Howl. A crit Ice Punch then one-shots it, getting through her first Pokemon with 0 damage taken. Next is her Pull Me, but a Terra Scratch is enough to one-shot, which is pretty funny to see this late into the game. This leaves Nemona with her Quaxwell. It tanks a Scratch pretty well, but then uses Work Up, which means Jude can lock it in with an Encore, allowing her to safely finish off the battle with a couple more scratches. Compared to the last two gyms, Iono is a huge step up in power, having 2 pretty strong fully evolved Pokemon, and an ace that has 0 weaknesses and just loves to spam confusion. So this was going to be a tough battle. Things start off well as Iono's Wattrel is only able to land a soft Spark on Chris before he one-shots it with a Rock Slide. But this is where the trouble begins as she sends in Belly Bolt. This thing is an absolute tank and dishes out massive hits. Thankfully, Phantom resists all of its moves, so even though he doesn't do much damage with Mega Drain, he surely can win a battle of nutrition. Oh, that was a lot of freaking damage, man. Well, since Phantom can't take it down, I bring in my other grass type Mossy, who can put the oversized avocado to sleep with Spore. I then set up a Leech Seed for the passive damage and healing. Mossy then hits a pretty soft headbutt as Bellybolt wakes up and retaliates with another very hard hitting Spark. But another Spore puts it right back to sleep, and a couple more headbutts and a final tick of Leech Seed damage takes down her second Pokemon. And this is why Mossy is such a great Pokemon in a Nuzlocke. Next is Luxio, who also gets Leech Seeded by Mossy, and my plan was to put it to sleep, but it makes contact with a weak Spark, proccing my Effect Spore, poisoning it. This means we can't put it to sleep, but now it's taking both Leech Seed and poison damage at the end of every turn, so I stay in and a couple of headbutts can finish it off, leaving Iono with her ace Miss Magius. I attempt to Spore it, but it outspeeds and hits a Confuse Ray, which sadly causes Mossy to hit herself. I know a Hex is coming our way, so I bring in Jude, who is immune to the attack, and I've given her the Scope Lens, boosting her chance to crit. This combined with Slash's already heightened crit chance means Jude is an absolute monster. But Miss Magius is able to land another Confuse Ray, which could cause us some major problems. Jude thankfully breaks through and hits a massive crit slash, bringing Iono's ace very low. Now that we're already confused and are immune to Hex, Iono is now forced to hit us with a Terra boosted Charge Beam, which leaves Jude with just above half HP, but Miss Magius gets the special attack boost, so we're unlikely to live another one. We're still confused and hitting ourselves here could be fatal. Thankfully, Jude doesn't muck around and gets the job done with one last powerful slash, earning Hoenn their third badge, and showing off how essential Jude is going to be for winning this challenge. Before taking on Mela and her fire types, I head back to Kitakami to pick up another essential team member, Honey the Phoebus, and after a quick trade, she can evolve into the beautiful Milotic. With such a powerful water type, it's no surprise that Mela was a walk in the park as Honey sets up the rain and destroys Mela's team with a couple of serves. And since Orthworm has such horrible special defense, Honey could solo it as well, bringing us straight to Kofu. Since Kofu uses water types, I know the perfect counter, Hibbs the Lotad, who 4 times resists water type attacks, and funnily enough, right behind Kofu's very own gym is a Water Stone, which we use to fully evolve Hibbs into the powerful yet freaking groovy Ludicolo. I'm pretty confident going into this Kofu fight, but his lead Veluza is well prepared for Hibbs and his grass typing as it hits a nasty super effective Pluck, but a Terra boosted Giga Drain from Hibbs is able to one-shot it, healing him back to full HP. Next is Wugtrio, who is one of the fastest Pokemon in the game and easily outspeeds Hibbs, hitting him with a nasty headbutt, which causes him to flinch. Hibbs could be in danger here if Fogtrio crits or gets a second flinch, but thankfully neither happens and Hibbs can once again one-shot with Giga Drain, healing his HP right back to full. This leaves Kofi with his ace, but Hibbs can actually outspeed this one, so I opt to use the base 90 power energy ball for an easy Oko. Okay, if you guys have watched any of my Nuzlocke videos, you'll know how much I hate Atticus, and my current team really isn't equipped to handle him. So I had to go out and assemble an elite group of Pokemon to take care of my problem. So let me introduce you guys to the Atticus Assassination Squad. Galaxy the Grumpig. He's here to finish off any loose ends the team leaves behind. Nico the Camerupt. She's the muscle of the team, ready to tear through any enemy. And lastly, Fernando, the Swallow. This mustache pile of sludge is the ace and main player in taking down Atticus. Atticus leads the battle with Skuntank, who hits Fernando hard with a Sucker Punch as Earthquake brings it down below half. I know it's going to spam Sucker Punch, so I begin to stall turns with Protect. I then use Encore, and then Yawn, and finally a second Protect as Skuntank falls asleep, so Fernando can finish it off with another Earthquake. Thanks to all the stalling, Fernando is at full HP when Atticus brings in Reveroom. This thing is a monster and hits a nasty Bulldoze, leaving Fernando with just above half HP. But Swallow retaliates with a 4x super effective Earthquake, barely leaving the Reveroom alive. I then Protect to get some more leftover healing, which ends up being a lifesaver, as Reveroom crits on its next Bulldoze. But Fernando isn't the ace of the Atticus Assassination Squad for nothing, so he hangs on with 1 HP and finishes off his target with another Earthquake. Fernando is way too low to deal with Muck, so I bring in Galaxy on a Sludge Wave. A Psybeam from Grumpig isn't enough to 2-shot Muck, and a Sludge Wave ends up poisoning him. I held Petra Berry does cure the poison, and another Psybeam leaves Muck with red HP. But since Galaxy is so low, I decided to go for Rest, fully healing him. I can then fire off a Snore to finish off Muck, leaving Atticus with his Starmobile. With a huge wall right in front of us, there's only one member of the Assassination Squad that could deal with it. So I bring in Nico. They trade blow after blow after blow, and left at just 16 HP, Nico fires off one last Earth Power for the KO, defeating Atticus with 0 deaths. And it's all thanks to the Atticus Assassination Squad. Now, I thought about this for a while, but I ultimately decided to evolve Jude into Slacking. Yeah, its ability is more like a liability. But the boost in her stats should make up for it, especially with setup moves banned. And then Phantom is the next to evolve, and honestly, Sceptile looks incredible in this game, and he learns one of the coldest moves ever, Leaf Blade. Well, with everyone fully powered and evolved, let's take on Larry. Now normally I'd just set up on Kamola, but I can't do that this time around because, well, setup moves are banned, so I'm actually a little bit nervous for this battle. And sadly, Jude's Drain Punch leaves Kamola with just a Slither as it lands a Yawn, and thanks to her Truant ability, Jude can't attack on the next turn. This allows Kamola to land a soft slam as Jude falls asleep, but I came prepared as I held Lumberry triggers waking her up so she could finish it off with another Drain Punch. Next out is the Dunsparce, who gets a free turn to land a Glare, which is super annoying. Thankfully, Hyper Drill isn't doing too much damage, and Drain Punch is a nice and clean 2-hit KO, so after avoiding a Parahax, Jude takes out the Dunsparce, leaving Larry with his A-Star Raptor. I obviously can't keep Jude in here with her speed cut, so I bring out our walled Chris, who tanks a Facade like it's nothing. But then I made a huge mistake, because after taking a second Facade, Chris paralyzes Staraptor with Thunder Wave. Normally this would be a good thing. A speed cut and a chance for it not to attack is pretty strong, but Facade's damage is doubled when the user is poisoned, burned, or you guessed it, paralyzed. This means on the next turn, Facade brings Chris down to just 18 HP, as Power Jam does like squishy noise damage in return. Switching here is pretty dangerous, but since I have a few fighting types already, I decide to risk it and bring in Rob, and this bad lad lives the incoming Facade with 1 HP. What a legend. He then lands a Fake Out for some free chip, and then a Terra boosted Force Palm is able to take down the Facade Abuser, winning a scrappy 5th badge. And straight after the battle with Larry, Nemona ambushes us, and I notoriously always struggle with this fight, but hopefully the Hoenn team can make this an easy one for once. And Jude starts things off pretty strong as she quickly handles her first 2 Pokemon. Due to a Truant ability, however, Jude is now at half HP, so I use this time to switch into Phantom. But Pormo the little rat uses Thunder Wave, which cripples Phantom's speed. He can one-shot it on the next turn with a crit Leaf Blade, but now Phantom is slower than the incoming Quaquaval. I am pretty confident that Air Slash can't one-shot us, and he does avoid the Para Flinch to hit a Terra boosted Leaf Blade, but it fails to one-shot, leaving it on red HP. I was pretty certain that Honey was a safe switch here, but we get pretty unlucky as the incoming Aqua Step crits, instantly putting Honey in kill range. I don't really have a safe play here, and since no one can tank 2 Aqua Steps, and Quaquaval now outspeeds everyone, I had only one option. So I bring in Mossy and pray that a Muck Punch is enough to finish it off. And my golly, he does it. Mossy the Giga Chad ends the battle, saving me the embarrassment of losing another Pokemon to Nemona. Next on the to-do list is Rhyme, the double battle specialist. So to beat her, I needed a very special Pokemon, a pure power Medicham. It might seem weird to bring a Psychic type to the Ghost type gym, but trust me, it'll pop off. With that, it's time to take on Rhyme. My lead is Jude and Medicham, as she leads with Bayonet and Mimikyu. Medicham is immediately half-shot by a Shadow Sneak, but Mimikyu thankfully targets Jude with a crit slash. A Shadow Claw from Jude then breaks Mimikyu's disguise, and Medicham uses Skill Swap on Jude, giving her the Pure Power ability, doubling Jude's attack stat, and allowing her to attack every turn. From here, Jude and Mighty Anna take Rhyme down to One-Shot City, where crits aren't needed and the HP bars aren't pretty. After playing such a key part in defeating Rhyme, Medicham is immediately killed from an Iron Head by Iron Treads. He did half-shot it before dying, so Jude can quickly finish it off, but that was pretty silly of me. Phase 2 was easy enough though, as Honey just serves it to death, but a pretty stupid way to lose a Pokemon that could have been pretty valuable later on the run. Before we can take on Tulip, Nemona jumps us again, but Phantom just kinda solos her whole team. Sadly, Tulip wouldn't be as simple. Her first Pokemon Farigarath is easily beaten by Miney and her Crunches, but then she brings in her Fairy-type Gardevoir. I don't want to risk Miney's life, so I switch into Bayonet for his first appearance and he's dead. Well, okay, let's bring in Crawdon for his first battle and he's dead. God damn it. Well, it's probably time to stop playing around, and time for the Jude, who just one-shots Gardevoir with Shadow Claw. This brings in the Sparthra, but I know it's a free switch into Mighty, who can then one-shot it with a Terra boosted Crunch. This then brings in Tulip's ace Florges, who actually outspeeds Mighty and one-shots him with the Moonblast. I don't know why I'm so hell-bent on letting everyone die in this fight, but here we are. I send in Jude and she does hit a nasty Shadow Claw, almost bringing it into the red, but then it retaliates with a crit Moonblast. Tulip, please just leave me alone. Sadly, because of Jude's ability, she can't stay in, so I bring in Honey, and she tanks a Moonblast and a Petal Blizzard, but Surf is finally able to bring it down to 1 HP. Well, I'm forced to stay in, but we must have been speed tying because Honey outspeeds and lands one final Surf. So after 3 deaths, we've earned our 7th badge. That was a really bloody fight. Well, surely Grusha won't be an issue. Well, I'd love to say that, but sadly our only fire type is Nico, and she's great and all, but she does lack in the speed department, which means Frostmoth gets to set up a Tailwind before being one-shot by Lava Plume. Sadly, her next Pokemon is also much bulkier than Frostmoth and hits a nasty Liquidation, which is barely not a 2-hit KO on Camerupt. And well, our Lava Plume also fails to bring it into the yellow because of its thick fat ability. And another Liquidation leaves Nico in the yellow after eating a Citrus Berry, and we must have high rolled our second Lava Plume because it finishes off Titan. This then brings out her big old bear, and in fear of an Aqua Jet killing Nico from this range, I switch into Jude, who takes out the bear with a couple of Drain Punches. With Grusha's ace hitting the field, I decide to bring in Chris, who eats a Hurricane like it's nothing, but sadly my big nose fella doesn't take an Ice Beam nearly as well, and his Power Gem honestly does pretty pathetic damage, so I have to bring in Skylar to clean up his mess, and she dodges like 3 Hurricanes while taking out Altaria with Dazzling Gleam and Mystic Fire, earning Hoenn their final gym badge. Well, we still have a lot of work to do before we can challenge the Elite Four, and the first step is taking on Ortega, and this is where I can finally bring out Lily the Survivor, who I Terra to boost her poison moves. Hang on a second. That's not... oh no. So yeah, I forgot that I got Lily from a Terra raid, so her Terra type is actually Dragon. So not only do we miss out on the poison damage, but now she's weak to fairy type moves. And I don't mean to point out the obvious, but against the fairy team boss, this isn't great. Thankfully, Azumarill just uses Charm, so a second Sludge Bomb can finish it off. Wigglytuff is then up next, and it also barely lives a Sludge Bomb, and because of my little mistake, Wigglytuff can hit a super effective Play Rough for some pretty insane damage. Lily can outspeed and finish Wigglytuff off with a second Sludge Bomb. Now, I was aware that a Sludge Bomb wouldn't one-shot Dash Bun, but I didn't expect it to outspeed and kill Lily before she could even chip the baked doggo. Kinda sucks losing Lily before she could really do anything else, but this does give me a free switch into Fernando, who can KO Dash Bun with 2 Sludge Bombs, which leaves Ortega with his Starmobile. And here I make another mistake. Knowing that he normally uses Steel Roller first turn, I try to lock him in with Encore, which would give me 3 free turns. But I forgot that Game Freak hates fun, as the Starmobile is unaffected. It then confuses Fernando, but he's able to break through and hit a surprisingly hard Sludge Bomb. He's then brought into the red from a magical talk as he breaks through confusion again and brings the Starmobile below half HP with a second Sludge Bomb. The leader of the Atticus Assassination Squad needs some support, and who better than his friend and former squad member, Nico, who walls the Starmobile pretty hard, allowing her to slowly but surely finish it off with multiple earth powers. Next up on the list is the final Titan, but Phantom kinda just no-diffs it, so it really isn't worth going over. But with a new level cap, I can now finally bring out Magnus the Salamence, one of the coolest dragon types in the game. But Salamence isn't the only OP new team member, because now it's time to show off the God of Weather, the Ender of Sun, Jamie the Pelipper, who goes no rusher on Eri's whole team and half-shots her Starmobile before falling to a spin out. Was kind of a kamikaze lifestyle, but Jamie put in the hard work so Skylar could come in and finish off the final star boss with a Moonblast, bringing us to the Elite Four. Well, it's finally time to take on the Elite Four, and first up is Rika, and I have a pretty surprising lead for this fight as I send out Chris. He is immediately hit by a nasty Muddy Water, but it was also he can set up some Stealth Rocks. And now I can bring in Phantom, who one-shots Wishcash with a Leaf Blade. This then brings out Rika's Camerupt, who threatens Phantom pretty hard with a super effective Fire Blast, but brother, we ball. And I'm rewarded for my poor decisions with a critical hit, guaranteeing the kill on Camerupt. Next is Donphan, who normally can't be one-shot thanks to its sturdy ability, but the rocks we set up first turn breaks its sturdy, so we can one-shot it, and it lived. God damn it. Well, Phantom couldn't clutch up, so he's forced to take a poison jab that leaves him dangerously low, and then we outspeed finishing it off, so it wasn't really any trouble, but of course that was the Leaf Blade that crit. Come on, man. Now we have to deal with the rest of Rika's team. Well, I say deal with, but her Dugtrio is extremely fragile, so it's an easy one-shot with Leaf Blade, and apparently so is Clodsire because it also just gets one-shot, winning the first Elite Four battle. Next up is Poppy, and to take down this little monster, I'll need to hire the ace of the Atticus Assassination Squad. You all know her, you all love her, it's Nico time, baby. She's a professional, so she feels no remorse as she systematically slaughters Poppy's Pokemon one by one. Well, until Magnezone shows up. It's another annoying sturdy abuser, and since it lives on 1 HP, it can set up a light screen which severely hinders Nico's damage output. So I stall out turns as I bring in Mossy, who can finish off the 1 HP with a Muck Punch, which leaves Poppy with her ace Tinkatongue. And I don't want Mossy eating a Play Rough, so I bring in Jude, who actually just ends up dodging it, and Tinkatongue does hit a Gigaton Hammer, but it doesn't even bring Jude below 50%, so she retaliates with an Earthquake, which Tinkatongue just barely lives. Since it outspeeds and we have to waste a turn with Truant, I decide to switch Nico back out, but even with a Choice Scarf, Nico gets outsped. Thankfully, the incoming Stone Edge doesn't crit, so Nico hangs on tight with 76 HP and can finish off the battle with one more Lava Plume. Remember, not even your children are safe from this killer. So far, we haven't lost a single member to the Elite Four, but that was about to change, because now it's time for our second battle against Larry. He leads with Tropius and I lead with Chris. Tropius sets up the sun, and Chris sets up some rocks. Since Chris has the sturdy ability, I'm free to click Bolt Switch for free damage. Turns out Chris had Magnet Pull this whole time. I guess he never got one shot, so I never knew. That's really sad, but Chris was definitely falling off towards the end here anyway, so if anyone had to die, it's kinda good that it was him. Since the sun is up, I decide to bring in Nico, who gets outsped and half-shot by Solar Beam, but Eruption is still able to one-shot it in return. This then brings out Staraptor, and well, I thought that Choice Scarf would be enough to outspeed, but I was dead wrong, as Larry ends a second life, this time with a Brave Bird. Turns out, even the ace of the AAS fears death, and while she died with blood on her hands, we will always remember her fondly. Thank you, Nico. Rest now, for your days of killing are over. And now it's time to bring in Big Bubba Jude, who takes a close combat like it's nothing, and then heals up the scratches with a Drain Punch, killing the Staraptor. That was for Nico, you goddamn monster. Altaria is out next, and it catches Jude on her loafing turn, but its damage output is nothing to be afraid of, so an Ice Punch on the next turn clearly one-shots it. Hell, Jude even one-shots Oricorio, leaving Larry with his Ace Flamigo. Predicting a close combat, I bring out Magnus for his very first battle, and after tanking a soft close combat, he terrors, and for some reason Flamigo just uses Throat Chop, as Dragon Claw barely fails to Oko. Not wanting to take a Brave Bird, I bring in Honey, but Larry just ends up using Throat Chop again, so thinking he'll just keep spamming it, I stay in. But he switched up quick and goes for a suicidal Brave Bird, which leaves Honey on just 9 HP. But the recoil ends up finishing him off, so we won the battle, but not without losing 2 valuable friends. Well, it's time to move on and take on the Dragon Master Hassel. He leads with Noivern, and I lead with Choice Scarf Gardevoir, who gets outsped. I'm sensing a theme here with this Elite Four run. Thankfully, Moonblast one-shots, so we don't have to worry about it, but losing half of Skylar's HP isn't optimal. Hassel then sends out his Poison Dragon, so I bring in the leader of the AAS, Fernando, who counters his Poison Brethren. So he comes in on a Sludge Bomb, which barely scratches him, and then we lock it in with Encore, which allows Fernando to safely take it out with Earthquakes, making it an easy kill. Next out is Flapple, and predicting a Dragon move, I bring in Skylar, who is immune to the incoming Dragon Rush, and then promptly one-shots it with the next turn with a Moonblast. Haxorus then suffers the same fate, leaving Hassel with his Baxcalibur, who is a tanky monster, so I'm forced to make a sacrifice, and sadly, we have to say goodbye to the leader of the AAS. Fernando, you were a soldier, and we couldn't have made it here without you. Goodbye, my brother. I bring in Jude, who hits an Ice Punch for half of its HP, as she takes a freaking crit Glaive Rush like a Giga Chad, and since I know it'll go for another Glaive Rush, I bring in Skylar, who eats the Dragon type attack, and can kill with a Moonblast. We had to say goodbye to Fernando, but now we can challenge the champion of Paldea. Geeta is one of the easiest champions in the franchise, but I always lose at least one Pokemon to her, so I'm hoping today would be the day that I get through this with 0 deaths. So let's see how we went. Jude fails to take out her lead Espratha with the Shadow Claw, and since her special defense was lowered by Lumia Crash, I decided to switch out. Skylar resists the incoming psychic attack and can finish off our Spartha with a Choice Scarf Moonblast. This brings in King Gambit, and it's pretty terrifying, so I bring Jude back out, who eats up the Iron Head and then one-shots with a Drain Punch on the next turn. Geeta then brings out her Avalog, so then predicting a Body Press, I bring Skylar back out. Sadly, Moonblast is barely not enough for the one-shot, and it's able to retaliate with an Earthquake, bringing Skylar pretty low as well. A second Moonblast does finish it off, but now Go-Goat enters the field. I switch again into Jude, but Drain Punch isn't doing enough damage to compete with Horn Leech healing, especially since we have to deal with loafing turns. So I decide to switch into Rob, and I get pretty lucky as he hits a crit fake out but decent chip. But then, Go-Goat outspeeds Rob on the next turn and boosts his attack and defense with Bulk Up, which allows it to live a close combat. I know it's going to go for Play Rough here, so I switch back into Jude, but that defense boost is proving to be extremely annoying as Drain Punch isn't able to finish it off. But now that I know it won't go for Play Rough, I can safely switch into Magnus, and a Flamethrower can finally put the goat down for good. Her next Pokemon, Veluza, has access to Ice Fang, so keeping in Salamence isn't a good idea. So I bring in Jude, who eats a crit Ice Fang like it was a goddamn protein bar, and then uses those newly gained gains to hit a crit Shadow Claw, obliterating the fish. Now we're on to Geeta's final Pokemon, Gilmora. Sadly, Jude is forced to take a Sludge Wave on a loafing turn, and now she's way too low to keep in, so I switch Honey into the incoming Terra Blast, and she's still got 2/3 of her HP, so it's safe to tank another one, and a Terra boosted Surf one-shots Gilmora. I've finally beaten Geeta with 0 deaths. It's sad to say, but it's been a while since I was able to pull that off. The run, however, is far from over. Now that we've cleaned up the side characters, it's now time to battle the main cast. I start things off with Arven. Jude KOs Greedent with a couple of Drain Punches, Honey then comes in and one-shots Garganacl with Surf, and Jude Ice Punches Toadstool for an easy one-shot. Magnus then one-shots Scovilla with Fly, and Honey whittles down Cloyster with Surfs and recovers, leaving Arven with his ace. I bring in Jude, but she's brought down to red HP from Crutch before hitting Drain Punch, which isn't able to one-shot, and the healing isn't enough for Jude to stay in, so I bring out Mossy. I thought that Mach Punch would be an easy KO, but it lives on legit 1 HP, and then kills Mossy with Play Rough. Losing Mossy so late into the game is super tragic, and I definitely could have avoided this death. I then bring in Skylar and she finishes the battle off with a Moonblast, but losing my only Spore user and best fighting type was definitely a big loss. Thankfully the director was an easy battle, but Penny would sadly take another life. Her first 5 evolutions are pretty easy to deal with since my team has counters for each one, but her Sylveon is a bit trickier. I assumed Hibbs could live at least one Moonblast, so I stay in to get off a Leech Seed, but her Moonblast ends up critting, killing the team's best dancer. Jude can come in and finish things off with a couple of Earthquakes, but I'm slowly running out of Pokemon in the box, so I really need to lock in against Nemona. The battle against Nemona starts off well as Phantom one-shots Lycanroc, but Phantom doesn't really have an answer for her Goodra, so I switch into Jude. She lands a nasty Ice Punch, but Goodra barely survives and retaliates with a critical hit Dragon Pulse. I can't afford to lose Jude here, so I switch into Skylar, who can finish Goodra off with a Moonblast. Orthworm sadly hard counters us since we're locked into Moonblast, so I bring in Magnus, and Flamethrower is an easy one-shot. Pawmot sadly has Ice Punch, so I do need to switch again, so I bring Skylar back out, and a super effective Moonblast one-shots Pawmot. The Dunsparce enters the field next, so I bring in Rob, but Nemona outplays me by setting up a free coil. Rob can do small chip damage with Fake Out, but Hyper Drill on the next turn does insane damage. Thankfully, Force Pump does get the paralysis, which means he can outspeed next turn and land a close combat, but it lives with 1 HP. But Rob also lives on 1 HP thanks to Friendship, so he can finish it off with a Force Palm, leaving Nemona with her final and scariest Pokemon, Quaquaval. I don't have any safe switches, so I sadly do have to sacrifice Rob, but he dodges the Aqua Step thanks to Friendship and lands a close combat for some heavy chip. This was actually pretty clutch by Rob, but sadly he can't keep avoiding death, so an Aqua Step finishes him off, but he died a goddamn hero. I bring in Phantom, and because of the chip, a normal Leaf Blade is easily able to finish off Quaquaval, and now we're on to the final fight of the run. I'm normally a Scarlet one-trick, so it's been a while since I fought Toro, so I was both excited and a bit nervous. He leads the battle with Iron Moth, and I lead with Jude. And after tanking a nasty Sludge Wave, Jude retaliates with an Earthquake which one-shots Iron Moth. Next is Iron Hands, and this is a pretty bad matchup for Jude, so I bring in the last member of the AAS, Galaxy. But all he can do is land a Psychic before joining his brothers in the afterlife as he's killed by a Thunder Punch. I bring in Skylar, who finishes Iron Hands off with a Moonblast, bringing in Iron Jugulis, but a Terra boosted Moonblast one-shots it as well. Iron Thorns comes out next, so I bring Jude back out, and a 4-time super effective Earthquake is an easy OHKO. I'm kinda forced to sacrifice Jude here though, but she survives 2 freeze dries with 1 HP, allowing her to land a Drain Punch, half-shotting Iron Bundle. But eventually, Mama Jude does fall, and I bring in Skylar and finish it off with a Moonblast, leaving Toro with his final Pokemon, Iron Valiant. Now I thought with a Choice Scarf, Skylar would easily outspeed, but this wasn't the case, and it actually one-shots her with a Poison Jab. That was very unfortunate, and now I'm kinda forced to bring out Magnus for the Intimidate drop, which is enough for him to survive a Spirit Break, and a Fly from Magnus leaves it on legit 1 HP. Why does this keep happening to me? Since it survived, I have to sacrifice Magnus, letting him die to a second Spirit Break, but now I can end this run how it started, with Phantom. He comes in and finishes this adventure off with a Leaf Blade. And that's how I beat a Pokemon Violet Hardcore Nuzlocke using only Hoenn Pokemon. I hope you enjoyed, and if you missed the last 2 gens, then check out the video on screen. I'll see you guys in Generation 4.